really excited to be here today talking to what I would say is a pretty cool group of people who do some pretty impressive things in this world. So just as an icebreaker, why don't we just go around, if you guys can say, kind of who you are, what you do, and what's one thing about you that you want this audience to know? You can start it off, yeah.
Hi, I'm Erin Silvoy. I lead global marketing and channel development for Starbucks. So that's all of our marketing functions, global creative studio, and then I run our CPG business, which is all the coffee in a bag and bottle. And I guess the one thing I want you to know is it's my first time at Cannes, so I'm just really excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Selina Sykes. So I work at a company called Unilever, and I lead all of our transformation in marketing. So everything from like social, creator to AI. And like AI transformation. And I think something that I want you guys to know about me is the thing I'm most passionate about in that job is the people. And like, even though a lot of what I do is technology, I think the humans and the hearts of the humans and the minds of the humans is the most exciting thing that we've got.
Hi, my name is Chris Paul. I appreciate it. I just...
You guys didn't do that for the three of us. That's not that cool.
I did woo for him, too.
I did that for them. I did that for them. I just finished 21 years playing in the NBA. And I'm an entrepreneur, philanthropist, a lifelong learner, just always curious about business and learning and different things. And probably the interesting thing about me is this is my first time, too, here at Cannes.
I love it. Well, welcome to the first-timers over here. It's a fun time, and it's a good time to meet great people and figure out how you can get home and do some really good things. So one of the things that I want to start off with here is that I think physical brands are different than digital brands. If you think about the brands that we have here on stage, we have brands that have a physicality to them. We have brands that have brick and mortar. We have brands that you use, that you put on yourself. We have brands that you eat. We have brands that you watch. We have brands that you hang out with. As we think about physicality and as we think about like actually having like brick and mortar, I think there's a leg up that we as the four brands that, and I'm considering you as just your brand, that we have to build love, to build preference, to build favorability. Erin and I were talking before this. I have a 14-year-old daughter. She turns 15 on Thursday. She calls Starbucks Starbies. That is like...
So do my kids.
Yeah, like it's part of the vernacular. It's part of the zeitgeist. So can you guys just talk a little bit about like, why don't you start, Erin? You own a physical brand. How do you think about that when you're thinking about your marketing and the approach to what the message you're trying to put out in market?
Yes, we are definitely a physical brand. We have over 40,000 stores globally. And so everything we do is really through the lens of not just the store, but really the customer experience. And I would say our physical product isn't just, great beverages. It's actually about the experience with our baristas, who we call partners. And so we think about the physical experience actually being that moment of truth at our handoff plane in our stores, and that interaction that you have with our baristas. They really are the brand, and that's what gets our customers coming back. So we think about, as we go to market, is this going to make it harder for them? Are they going to be excited about it? So that's really how we think about our brand in the physical context.
I love that. Just to like you go, but I think one of the things we talked about was like how you are executing really interesting digital campaigns. You talked about the Real Reddit campaign, and then how do you think about that, and how do you translate it into the real world brand that the brands that you look after are? Yeah.
So I was going to say the interesting thing about Unilever is we work in like highly penetrated categories. So like I think something like 97, the penetration of like people who have a shampoo, a mayonnaise, a deodorant, a laundry powder in their house is huge penetration of the world, and something like a Unilever product's used every 3 seconds or something mad like that. So there's this constant experience people are having with our brands. So we definitely think about the physicality in terms of the product performance. Does it deliver on the promise? That's like number one. But then there's also like the sensorials, the aesthetics, because that all builds the brand experience. But to your question on like the realness, so one of our brands I'm sure you guys know is Dove. And Dove, started like over 25 years ago now, this real beauty movement, and it was one of the first to really talk about beauty coming from a place of realness, not coming from a place of changing and correcting yourself. And like talk about legacy and where we are now. Like, how do you translate that concept of real beauty that now kind of everyone talks about into 2026? So I might be jumping ahead a few questions, but like,
no, it's good.
I'll just tell the cool case study. So real beauty, what does realness mean today? Like, how do you take a legacy brand and make it real today? Where do you find the most real people today? It's on Reddit. Like, the most real people that just really talk about their product experience, their physical experience with the brand. And so what we did with our, like, 2026 innovation is we let them have our hair mask, let them talk about it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we brought real beauty to another level. We were like, we will let you be real about our brand, because that's what you are. You're a Redditor. They wrote all of their feedback, as they would do anyway, with or without us, and we made all of their feedback into ads, even the ones that didn't like it. So, you know, really bringing that concept of like, what's the product promise? Did it deliver? And where do you find those real voices to talk about it?
Yeah, I love that. Is it still going? Is that still something that you guys are enriching just in perpetuity?
Yeah, it's been a huge opportunity. It's been like a huge campaign. Like, you can take, I'm sure all the marketers in the room have got loads of ideas of where you could take something like that. Yeah. But what I liked about it is I love this idea of legacy. Like, I come from a legacy company, and just because you have legacy, you can still find relevance today if you really know who you are. Yeah. And Dove really knows who it is, and then it can find relevance now.
All right, so it takes time to build legacy. Chris, you just talked about the fact that you played in the league for 21 years. You built your legacy longer than that. You've been playing sport. You are a businessman. You talked about being a philanthropist. You just launched a new brand as well. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, how you've built your brand over the years as a legacy brand, and how you're thinking about building your brand? Because you are, in essence, Chris Paul 2.0 right now, post-league. So how are you thinking about building your brand, moving forward?
Yes, it's interesting, especially to hear you guys talk about the actual brands, because when you come into the NBA, they teach you that you're a brand yourself, right? And how do you market it? How do you want the world to perceive you? I just retired at 41. I came into the NBA when I was 19, right? So more than half of my life, I've been up here sort of building my brand, trying to figure out what it is. It has changed a lot. What I wanted my brand to be at 23 changed when I was 33. And it's a lot different now at 41. But I think the biggest thing in all the legacy and brand building is about storytelling. It's about storytelling, and you gotta really build it. You gotta really build it. So as an athlete, you build it day by day, right? Game by game, year by year, and not taking shortcuts. So I think that's what you were talking about with like brand identity and making sure that you deliver on that promise. I tried to make sure anybody who was a fan of mine or anyone who supported me, every time they watched me or came to see me play, they knew what they were going to get. So I'm a firm believer in a quote that I always say, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So the way I competed, the way I showed up as an athlete, that's the way I'm going to show up in business, right? So I want to make sure that my brand stands for something, and I think that's very important in building that legacy because like I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I started a snack brand, right? I have a production company. I have so many different things that I would like to do. And so I'm a consumer also. So these brands that you talk about kids talking about Starbies. I have a daughter who is all over these different brands and she's 13, so she's worried about how she looks before she go to school. You know, so trying to make sure that my brand can be on the same level of these brands is something that I'm always focused on.
So I think that's a good transition, talking about our 13 and 14-year-old daughters over here, to this new generation, right? There's Gen Z, there's Gen Alpha. These are consumers, these are people, these are human beings who are growing up, who don't know about the legacy of the brands that we're talking about, right? And the brands that we work on. In fact, like, they don't owe us anything right now. So how do you think about this younger generation, and how do you try to continue to lean in and support the legacy brand that you've built. Let's talk Starbucks first. Like, Starbucks is an incredible brand that has changed the lives of a lot of people. I am very caffeinated at all time, if you can't tell, so I appreciate you. But like, how do you think about this younger generation, and how do you stay relevant with them while still leaning into the legacy of who Starbucks is and the founding of the company?
First off, we're very fortunate because it sounds like even from both of you, right? Jenny really loves the Starbucks brand, and we've been doing things to enter the conversation with them that was already happening. And so I think that's how we look at engaging with these younger audiences, is really reinforcing what Starbucks has always been about for 55 years, right? Which is a place of connection, great coffee, premium experience, and making it yours and personalized, and having that moment of a connection again with our barista at the handoff plane. And so we're going to continue to reinforce that, but then what we're reinventing as part of our transformation that we've been undergoing the last 2 years is figuring out, again, how to enter the conversation with those audiences in ways that feel authentic. We don't want to just come in like a big brand unless we're going to add something to the conversation. And so you mentioned how they're calling us Starbies, and that was an insight. Actually, Candace, who runs our social media team, she's here in the audience, and we knew they were calling us Starbies. And so when we ended up at different IRL activations for that audience, we decided to just call it Starbies and be with them and be part of that conversation. So just one small example of how we kind of find those insights, understand how they're talking about us, and then show up in the way that they want to see Starbucks.
I love that. All right, so let's switch to Vaseline. Vaseline has been around for 150 years, you told me the other day, which is
150-year-old brand.
Incredible. There are so many different uses for Vaseline. In fact, we were just over at our cabana, and I saw somebody utilizing Vaseline for a blister on his ankle.
Great hack.
Right? Like, it's pretty topical. So as you think about the legacy of Vaseline, and you think about the future of the business, I mean, you guys won a Lion last year for one of your campaigns. Like, how do you continue to innovate, continue to market, continue to build for the future while leaning into the past and the history of the product?
I think, and it kind of builds on what you were saying, Chris, about like knowing your identity. I think even if something's 150 years old, the reason it's still around there must be relevance, because otherwise it would be out of business. Yeah. So the idea that we had, and I'll tell you about the Vaseline case if you hadn't heard it. It came from it wasn't a 150-year-old brand book, but it came from an old brand book that we found that was like in the archives. And it talked about Vaseline and what it stands for. And a lot of it was around like basically telling you about health, but in a really trusted way. That's what it was originally, like some of the stuff it talked about. And then you fast forward to now, and that's equally a problem today. There's so much misinformation around health, and there's so many things that people talk around. And as we started to investigate that, we looked online and we were like, oh my God, everyone is talking about Vaseline petroleum jelly. So not only an 150-year-old brand, that was our original product, like the petroleum jelly. And we were like, and they're all talking about their hacks, like crazy hacks, so many things. So instead of us like enforcing, this is what we want to say, we're the marketeers, we know, we kind of gave up that control to the community. And we said, you're interested in this is relevant to you.
I mean, I think like it's wild because you go back to the reason why that product was built, and like what it works for, right? And then people rally around that.
Like, you've got to just ask yourself the question, which I know both of you do, like who you are and how you show up.
Yeah.
That's what you were saying.
It's crazy. I was talking Vaseline when I was growing up, like my grandparents, it was lotion. Yeah. I worked at my granddad's service station, and I used to have to change tires. It was a Vaseline bottle sitting right next to the tire changer. That's what we used to put the plug in before we put it into the tire to plug a tire. So yeah, Vaseline, universal.
It's true.
Verified. There you
go. I'll check it out in the lab.
All right, so we talked about your career, and I mean, you played for a long time. 21 years is a long time in the league. So you started, and you just talked about storytelling and how you were different telling stories at 21 than you were at 31. And as you've continued to, I won't say age, I'll say evolve. So throughout your time building your brand, have you had to think about, okay, who was I when I was younger? Who am I now? How do I evolve my brand, specifically as you get into business, right? So like, you got to think about your image, your likeness. Like, do I want to support this business? Do I want to be involved in this business? Does this business does it relate to who I was 15 years ago, or is this like who I want to be now? So can you talk a little bit about how you think about your brand?
Yeah, so I went to college for 2 years, and then when I went to the NBA, out of the 21 years, I was on the executive committee for 17 of those years, and I was the president of the union for 8 years. So I literally had a business class on steroids, right? You didn't get paid for it, but I was basically negotiating the CBA, built a whole office in New York while I was playing in LA. It was so many different things, so many hats that I had to wear. So what I really learned is how to manage people. I had 450 of the most recognizable faces in the world that I was essentially the president of, right? So you have all these different opinions of guys who want to do this or guys who want to do that. So I've changed. The things that I've learned, I got to know every NBA owner, every last one. I was 22 years old sitting in the Waldorf Astoria. I don't know, any of y'all ever remember David Stern? Right, rest in peace, David Stern. I was a 22-year-old kid sitting in an 18-hour negotiating meeting, sitting across, listening to what's said about this business. Right, when I was a kid in the backyard shooting jump shots, trying to be Michael Jordan, I didn't think about 401k. Right, I didn't think about what a union was. So, like I said, coming in at 19, exiting at 41, I constantly thought about things that changed. Right, I had to think about money. I learned about money the last 20-something years, and I'm still learning about money. I was telling somebody on the panel the other day, me and my wife just figured out I got to find a PCP. I got to find a primary care physician.
By the way, that's hard. That is very difficult.
I done had a team trainer or team doctor since I was 19 years old. So my life has drastically changed, and now into business, and that's why I said the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I've been able to rely on this NBA contract for the last 20-something years. And so the people who worked on my team have, some of the other stuff that I've done has almost been a side hustle. It's not a side hustle anymore. This is real life and livelihood. And, a lot of people hear retirement and just be like, oh, I'm a chill. Yeah, I don't know what chill is. Like, that's just not the way my life has been set up. I get excited about work, and I get excited about changing things and being able to impact other people's lives. So, yeah, I've learned a lot about not only just business, but I've learned a lot about myself. And I don't want to be the same person I was 5 years ago, right? I want to keep learning and keep evolving.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. I think it's interesting because you're looking after your brand. We're all looking after our brands, right? We're all building our brands, but I work for Lyft. So at Lyft, I'm building an advertising business. I'm a steward of the Lyft brand. I'm trying to create a moment for our company in a way that represents the brand, but it's not me every single day, right? It's like the brand, same as you guys with Unilever and with Starbucks. So it's a little bit more unique, I think, in your space because it's you and it's your brand.
I'll say this too, and this is for anybody leading a brand, and what I learned in helping build the NBA brand for all those years is that you got to be willing to listen, right? So I think what has helped me over my career is that I have a 17-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. I started having teammates in the locker room who were closer in age to my kids than they were to me. Right? I had a teammate once upon a time call me and ask me to put my son on the phone so that they could play video games. Right? But what's cool about it is that I was constantly learning. Some of the music that I would be exposed to or listen to would be totally different than something if I wasn't in the NBA locker room. And so what they did was they gave me an opportunity to know what's trending, what's going on. I'm sure my kids probably hate it because they can't do nothing without me knowing because all my teammates are doing a lot of the same thing. So the thing that I learned in the NBA and helping grow that business is that if you are not willing to evolve and change, you will be left behind. You will be left behind. And so that is one of the things that I'm most grateful for in knowing that your brand has to be able to evolve.
Yep. All right, so that layers into the next theme, the next topic. I think all of us right now are pretty excited about what's going on in the world of sports, right? If anyone was in New York the last couple weeks, like, wow. And I'm a Celtics fan, but like the Go Knicks, that was incredible. That was just such an incredible run. There was also a Stanley Cup won for any of you hockey fans out there, and And the World Cup's going on last night. France played. We're in France. We're watching France. It was incredible. So as we think about sports, as we think about culture, that's something that you have to adapt to, and that's something that you have to think about, and that's something that you have to play into. So, I guess, Erin, let's start with you, and then we'll kind of roll down the line. You, at Starbucks, activated during the past Olympics. You, in Starbucks, are going to be a part of LA 28, which is exciting. So can you talk a little bit about how the global sports industry, and just sports as a theme, layers into what you think about when you go into strategic planning for the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, we're a big brand, and so we want to do big things, and there's nothing larger, right, than the Olympics and other major sporting events. And so we want to make sure Starbucks shows up there. We should be part of that conversation. It's a natural part of what everyone will be doing the morning of those games. And then I think to build on that, because we've really just been getting back into culture as a brand as part of our transformation. But I love what Chris said about being open to learning, being open to change, and also like being open to bringing like the right talent into your team, right, that can see what the right sports angles that you should be. I am certainly not a sports expert, but I've got like amazing people on my team who are, and they're going to find the right moments to connect Starbucks in a thoughtful way that makes it, makes sure that we're showing up authentically in those conversations. And we did an activation with the Knicks. I had my sports guy lead it, and we made sure, right, that our New York market was really involved. The New Yorkers felt good about the campaign. Otherwise, for us to sit in Seattle and to kind of put that campaign out there, it would have felt really inauthentic.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Unilever, the official personal care sponsor of the World Cup, right? It's a pretty important thing. It's a pretty big activation. Can you talk a little bit about why World Cup, how the World Cup matters? Once every 4 years, but the most incredible, 36 days, 37 days? Like, it's wild. So tell us a little bit about, what you're doing and why.
Yeah, so I'm English, so football, soccer is like a huge part of culture. And I think like any sport, it really matters to people. Like, there's something really deep in that really connects with people. And what do we want to do as marketers? We want to matter to people. We want our brands to matter to them. We don't want to market to them as consumers. We want to matter. And working in that sports arena, working with teams or other brands, being part of these huge global moments like FIFA, it's such an opportunity for us if you can find a way to be part of that story and part of that storytelling and bring your brand to life in a way that adds to the conversation or listens and finds a way that you can really make the people in those communities feel seen and heard. Like, you get me. You understand what I'm doing, and people love that because people love to be seen and heard and feel like what they care about matters. So with FIFA, there's huge opportunity for that because it is literally a global moment. Like, there's so much positivity, in the world we live in today. Having something where like every country in the world almost is feeling like part of this optimistic, movement to come together and just play a game of football. It's such a cool thing to be part of. So for our personal care brands, it's about how we're finding ways to find the human stories behind the football, to find the fan moments that only the fans and the communities will get, and make our brands relevant to those. And there's already been like so many so far, and by the end of the World Cup, there'll be even more. It's a huge moment.
I mean, is there any way to play into the Tartan army right now, taking over America? If there's any Scottish fans following what's going on in social media?
I find it funny. So does anyone, if you're not British, like Tartan Army are the Scottish fans, and they go in their tartan with their kilts. And apparently they rocked up in Boston, and everyone's like, why are you here? And they're like, there's a football match. But now everyone's fallen in love with them because of their passion. And people get that because if you look at any sport, it's driven by passion. And then you can connect with that passion.
I love that. All right, Chris, sports is obviously like, pretty cornerstone to who you are. But can you talk about, as you're thinking about, continuing to build your brand, continuing to storytell, continuing to create who you want to become, because it sounds like you're not going to sit tight and just hang out. You're going to continue to build stuff. So how important is sports in the fabric of what you're doing?
It's everything. I'm an investor in a lot of different sports. Angel City, the Women's Soccer League, part owner of a cricket team. I have ownership in a league called the TBT and the TST. So the TBT is $1 million. This year is a $2 million basketball tournament. The TST is a 7v7 soccer tournament. I'm in the TGL. So I'm a huge believer in sport. I always say sport taught me everything I need to know about life, and especially when it comes to live sports, right? As much as everyone talks about technology and AI and how it's going to take over all these things, the thing that you can't change is live sports. The emotion, the energy, the passion, the real tears that you see when people make or miss a shot. I'm not a New Yorker or whatnot, but to see the crowd when OG got that tip in, they still feeling it. You know what I mean? It was like an out-of-body experience for a lot of people, and to see the generations, right? People who have been there with their grandfathers, with their kids or whatnot, there's nothing like sport that can recreate those moments.
Well, we are over time, and we have been over time for probably like 2 minutes, but I wasn't going to tell you guys. Anyway, we're over time. Thank you so much for coming. Erin, Selina, Chris, that was amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.